For part 2 of our Jaguar XJ6 introduction, we're going to go ahead and get it into the shop for a mechanical inspection. And if you haven't seen part 1, definitely go and check that out. Alright, so we've got our Jag in the shop. We're ready to get it up on the lift, but before we do that, we'll spend some time under the hood, and we're going to fire it up so you can hear how it runs. Now, I do apologize for the mess in the shop. We've been burning the midnight oil on all kinds of small bits here and there for people. I just did a fuel pump on a Lincoln Continental, which we didn't shoot video for. We just got it in, got it out, and we're still kind of cleaning up from that job. But we had to get this in here to show you, so here we go. Pop the hood open. I'll bring this camera forward and we'll go ahead and fire it up. So if I come into the back of the car, and it might happen a little more when it's warmed up, I'll detect a little pulse out of here every now and then on this side, whereas this side will be a lot smoother. And I feel like there's maybe a slight misfire, but we're going to do a tune-up on it anyway. Go ahead and power it down before we carbon monoxide ourselves. Suffice to say, I think that this engine could use a bit of a tune-up, and I'm going to look in the service manuals and see if there's any valve adjustments that need to be done. I'll probably pull the cam covers off and inspect everything. Although it is relatively low mileage at 62,000, it has been sitting a fair amount. Granted, the owner I bought it from had been driving it and put about 1,000 miles on it. And out on the highway, it's smooth, it runs great, but just idling, it seems a little rough to me. I don't know exactly how these should be, but we've ordered some tune-up parts already. We've got plugs and wires coming. I ordered a replacement coil just in case. I'd like to have one on standby if we need it. And then down here, you've got your distributor, which, why can't I get on camera? There it is. It's a little hard to see, but got your distributor down there. I've got a cap and rotor. Of course, the new plug wires. I know there's a pickup in there. We can figure out how to test that to make sure it's good. But this is as good a time as any to cut in. I did find that in these later XK engines, they run hotter with emissions control and have more issues with their tappet retainers coming out. A pretty common issue. A stake down kit is often recommended. Well, I was real happy to find that this one had it done. So the owner put a new battery in. He also put one of the cutouts that I like to use those as well. It's always a smart move. Looks like some new battery cables. All the wiring looks original, which is always important to check, especially on a Jag. Interesting, some of these relays look like replacements at some point. If you look at that red one, it just looks cleaner than the others and obviously a different color. So I wonder what that's all about. All the hoses look good. He did replace the high-pressure fuel line hoses that go from the rail to the injectors. Very important to do, especially on the 12 cylinders. They're known to burst and spray fuel onto the hot exhaust. And on this one, a little less of a problem because it looks like the exhaust is on that side. But still, hot engine, you don't want spraying fuel, so those lines can degrade over time. Good to replace them. He already did that, which is excellent. So our air cleaner assembly. Again, wiring up front looks good. Our fan doesn't look cracked. We'll have to test the clutch on it. Our radiator looks pretty good in terms of the backside at least. We'll know when we get it up in the air and look in the front as well. And again, just originality. Original overflow tank that looks in good shape. I am going to do cooling system maintenance on it. I don't recall the previous owner saying if he did or didn't, but I'm going to go ahead and put new hoses on. We're going to put a new cap. We'll replace the coolant. Got a new thermostat for it. Thermostat gaskets, all that. I'm going to leave the water pump as is, as long as it's not showing any signs of issues, but just some preventative maintenance. There's another one that looks a little new, and that red could be original, could not be, who knows? Might not be. Little fuse block with the original cover still there. Brake master cylinder. That's one thing that I had go bad on mine on day 3 of ownership on my original, and previous owner let me know he replaced it on this one. So it's got an early oxygen sensor down there, if you can see that. Kind of cool. Kind of neat just seeing some of this stuff that, you know, we take for granted on modern vehicles. Of course, a lot of them nowadays are direct injection, but port fuel injection existed for so many years and has proven itself to be a very reliable way of running an engine. As far as I'm concerned, it is, at least. And here we see a very early iteration of that, complete with Lucas symbols all over everything. So what could go wrong? And now, what we've all been waiting for. How is this car going to look underneath? All right, so starting out, we got our horns, got an electric fan. This is interesting to me because a lot of this was torn out when they did the V8 conversion on the one I had, so I didn't have a lot of this. Looks like we got an AC condenser. The radiator looks pretty nice back there. Looks like a transmission cooler. All the fins are amazingly good condition. Wiring looks all right. Looks like some of the wiring's out of the loom up there. I don't know if that means someone was fiddling with it over the years or it just never had the loom. But the bolts don't look too rusty. Now these front valances are known for getting bashed up and rusted. We've got a little bit of a hit here on this one. Probably bump up against the curb. You can kind of almost see the profile of a curb. So maybe pulling into a parking space, hit a high curb. But the stainless trim piece here is still present. This isn't dented too bad at all, and it's solid, as evident by that. This piece is solid. All of our rubber pieces are still there. I'm just excited. We've only gotten 1 foot of the car so far. I'm excited. Oh, here's where I get a little less excited. Look at how wet everything is under here, and that's to be expected. Now, I looked under the car and chatted with the owner. He was a very, very nice guy, very honest about everything, and you know, I talked about the leaks underneath, and didn't do it in a way to bash the car or to try to you know, be sneaky on the price or nothing. This is a 38-year-old car with an original drivetrain. It's bound to leak, especially from sitting as it had done for many years before he rescued it. So I give him kudos, and I'm not surprised that we're going to find some leaks under here that we're going to need to take care of. So it looks like we've got a leak on our rack. It's a POW rack. I wonder if that's original. Yeah, Jaguar number. Adwest Engineering, England. All right, that must be original. Interesting. I don't really remember on mine. So one thing that's very common to go, and he had done, are the rack bushings. And as you can see, there's this aluminum piece from the rack and the mounts. There's, you know, a little bit of clearance on either side. Well, when that rubber goes, all of a sudden it slides back and forth. The whole rack will move in those two bushes and clunk against either side of those. And what will happen is you'll go to turn the wheel and it'll go about a quarter turn and won't do anything. And that's literally the rack moving until it stops on the metal-on-metal contact and then moves the wheel. So he had that done. Back to my parts hoard, one thing that never quite made it on mine, I had replaced them, and I had ended up picking up at some point, probably off of eBay or something early on, a set of poly bushings. And I always thought that that would tighten it up a little more, but I never did them. More than likely, the rack on mine was also worn out because it had 220,000 miles, because driving this one, the steering's a lot tighter than I ever remember on mine. Those ball joints look good. Boots aren't even torn. Wonder if they're replacements. They are screwed in. I don't recall. But that one looks new. Look at the new blue. I bet you it's had ball joints replaced. I do have receipts. I have to go through them, but there was mention of a lot of suspension work done on this. You can see the shocks are new. I do remember him mentioning that. But nice tight suspension. I've pulled on the wheels, they're good. Wheel bearings seem good. Can't really see the brakes from this side, but you can see them here. There they are. They're looking pretty good. I always like the brakes on these. They're 4-pot calipers. They're fixed calipers. The pads slide in and out. Looks like we've got a new rubber brake line, which is awesome. And the steel line there going to the caliper looks good. Tie rod boot's a little bit kind of torn there, but otherwise it's not torn all the way through. It's just kind of skimmed, and otherwise looks good. Lots of leaks. We'll have to figure that out. Some engine stuff. Let's see here. All right, so it looks like one of our leaks is probably out of the oil pressure sender. If you look at that, I bet you that's one of our leaks for sure. And then it looks like we've got a little drip out of our filler, our oil fill plug. Not fill, our drain plug. Don't try to fill it there. Don't listen to me. You can tell I ad hoc it when I do these videos. But anyway, it looks like we got some drips coming out of there. I actually ordered a new one of these, and this is just an NPT pipe fitting. But I did get an actual plug for this. We're going to try it out and see if that helps. This hose, I don't know if it's leaking or if it's just got oil on the bottom of it, this little bridge hose for this oil filter adapter. It must have an oil cooler. I wonder if that was, because look at that, on the oil filter, it's got lines that come off the top, so I wonder if that's what that is. That's interesting. And that looks wet. That's part of the intake manifold. Looks like it has oil. I wonder if it's spraying it all out of this and just kind of getting up there from driving. There's our engine mount. Looks pretty good, actually. They're pretty cheap. I actually threw them in the cart and ordered a few of them because I figured it would need them eventually, just from aged rubber, but those don't look too bad. Okay, let's, our sump underneath, lots of grime and a little bit of oil on it, but looks like the worst is probably from the drain plug, at least on this side, and our sender. So not bad at all. And it doesn't look like there's a ton coming out the back, which would be a rear main seal, which is a pretty common issue, though there is some blowback on this side. We'll have to pop these covers off, these inspection covers. There we go. That was easy. And we can take a look in here at our flex plate and our torque converter. And it seems pretty dry. Let me reach in here. There's a little bit of dry, gunky stuff, but there's not like a pool of liquid under there. So that's positive. Now it looks like we might be marking our territory already. We got a little drip there. So let's see if we can figure out where that's coming from and not burn ourselves on this catalytic converter. So as I suspected, I'm seeing a lot of liquid coming out of this rack on the top here. So I wonder if there's a gasket here that's bad. If you can see, there's a little bit of pooling there. Try to see if you can see that with the camera. So a little pooling there. Could be a gasket in between those two pieces. Maybe it's coming out the top there, so we could have gaskets along there. So that looks like a source of leaks. It could be the power steering lines, but they actually look like they're in pretty good shape. And trying to look back around there, it looks like the connections are pretty dry. The engine side of the engine's dry. That's good. The air conditioner compressor they replaced. Looks like it's converted to R134, though he did tell me it had a leak, which I wasn't too surprised by. Just, again, given by the age. So maybe we'll leak test that and see if we can find out one of the lines maybe it's got a bad O-ring. But we got a new compressor to work with. That's awesome. Here is our parking brake cable. This was another fun one on mine since I had so much rust. One day I'm driving down the road and someone pulls up next to me. I'm on a divided highway. And they very hurriedly asked me to roll the window down with a terrified look on their face. And I'm like, yeah, what's up, man? Oh, there's sparks flying out the back of your car, which was extra bad because it had fuel leaks all the time, but we won't talk about that. And it turned out this little tripod thing here, this little bell crank had fallen off its mounts. It's riveted on, as you can see. Well, the rivets had rusted away, and it was dragging along the line, so I had to pull over and basically cut and yank the thing off and lost my parking brake from that point on. Can't remember if I ever fixed it before we got rid of it or if that was kind of toward the end. But this one's in really great shape, and well, you just got a little preview of the floor pan, which is in really good shape. But before we move back, let's just take a look at this side. Again, similar. Ball joints look replaced. Suspension work was done. Even this rubber mount bush here looks really good. So all in all, this thing's in really good shape. So transmission-wise, looks like we might have a leak coming out of this fitting. And the pan gasket's a little wet, but not horrible. So we do have some, it looks like fluid on it, but it's not much. It's bad enough it's going to need attention, but it's not pouring out. And I think our Fury looked worse when we brought it in. So we'll maybe take some steps to reseal that. We'll figure out what this fitting is and if that's leaking or not. But that's good. We got an exhaust mount back here. Very interesting transmission mount on these. If you've never seen one, they're very interesting. They're actually a spring-loaded mount. See how it moves up and down there. And if you look inside there, there's a spring. And that spring's in good shape, which is good because sometimes those wear out or break or whatnot. And there is a rubber piece, should be on either side. So here they are. There's one. Yep, and there's the other. So I've ordered a pair of those because those obviously like to perish, and these do look a little cracked, but honestly, they might just be molding. These might have been replaced at some point, but if they are original, I can't read it. Interesting transmission mount, kind of helps give some of the isolated feel in the vehicle. Very smooth on the engine, but I think we could clean that up a little bit by getting the engine to run a little smoother on idle. But driving the thing, it's so smooth. It's wonderful. But that's one of the reasons, that interesting mount back here, a spring-loaded, dampened mount, basically. You can see a little bit of spray back here, but nothing terrible. So that would be about where our prop shaft is. So here we go. Here's a sensor of some kind. This might be the speedometer sensor. And I am seeing some fluid along the end of it there, so we might have a little bit of leaks. You can see our spring-loaded mount better from this side, actually. I should have showed you this originally. There you go. You can kind of see the difference. And there's almost like two plates. If you can see that, as it would go, it would kind of bounce and damp itself a little bit, help damp the spring. But our output shaft is dry. Our drive shaft's up under this panel, so I can't really reach and grab it and hold the camera to test the U-joints, but I didn't feel any clunks or anything. Exhaust, they had the mid-pipe replaced at some point, so it's got a new catalytic converter. And the rest of the exhaust seems to be in serviceable shape, which is good. They actually used stainless exhaust back then. And look at that British Leyland. Old British Leyland muffler, original mufflers on it. All right, now here's where things get truly interesting if you don't know Jags. If you do know Jags, then you know what you're about to see. But Jags have a very interesting rear end design. It's actually been popular over the years for people to graph these in the hot rods because of their unique design. They have a quad shock and spring, so dual coilovers on either side, independent suspension, and inboard disc brakes. So these are the brakes right off the differential pumpkin. And fortunately, these look to be in decent shape. The pads are extremely easy to replace. The rotors, on the other hand, I never had to do them on my car, oddly enough, the one I had before. They always felt fine. But I would imagine you'd have a fair bit of work to do because you'd at least have to probably pull the axles off to get to the rotors. There's a better view of our inboard rotors and brake setup. So you see you have the brake rotors and calipers and pads right off the pumpkin. And then you have the output of the axle. Come on, camera, turn, and that goes to the wheel. But everything back here looks pretty decent, all things considered with the age. Got some grease points we can clean off and grease it up, but everything feels pretty tight when I yanked on it off camera. There's obviously some rubber bushes that could deteriorate over time, but everything seems to feel tight so far. Our pinion seal is clean and dry. That's good. Our original fuel lines and everything that's part of our brake setup, our parking brake. That's got the original heat shielding on it still. That's just one thing I like. This car is so nice. So I got tempted. There's the other side rotor. Everything again looks pretty good over here. This rubber bush, this is pretty common. These might be good for some replacement. Interesting, look at the safety wire they have holding that bolt in. That's all original. And here we have a 38-year-old rubber bush that has some cracking to it, but is otherwise there and present. A lot of times you just see something like this completely broken down. So again, very surprised by that. As you can see the jack point and how I kind of went right in front of it. This is where you'd put the factory jack, and I didn't want to put my pad on that. So I went right past it. It seems to be nice and safe. Here's the back mufflers or resonators. I'm not sure which one are resonators or mufflers. I would imagine these are resonators or just canister mufflers. Someone can probably correct me. But one interesting thing about these is the fuel tanks are basically like saddle tanks that ride on either side. So right next to the muffler, this whole thing right here, behind that panel, is a fuel tank. And if you look, it's actually got a removable panel here. It's not spot welded on or anything. This can all be removed, and you can access the tank back there and the hose that comes out and everything. And I know this because on my old car, I had a line break back here, and it was leaking fuel right onto the muffler. So fortunately, the muffler wasn't hot enough to cause any problems, but one thing to look out for on these is to check that out. We got a little bit of leaves back here. But again, all in all, look at the wheel wells, how clean everything looks, all things considered. Here you can see, yeah, now I remember, look at that. You see, that's the fuel line. And that looks like the wiring for the sender. And that's good to know because it's been a while since I've worked on one of these, so I've kind of forgotten some things. But the sender on one of the tanks is not working, which we'll show you on the dash. Again, common issue. It looks like, I'm hoping it's just a wiring issue and not something I got to pull the tank out and replace the actual sender. So we got a drain plug, drain probably for the sunroof, or it could be for the trunk. This does have a sunroof, and the sunroof does work. Very clean. Rocker panels, super clean. Yeah, a little bit of dent in the pinch weld. Someone probably put a jack there at some point in its life. No big deal. All in all, very clean. Tiny spot of rust right there. But like I said, most of these cars, this stuff's all eaten away. Original wheels. I'm torn on these. I don't know what you all think. I personally kind of think these are a little ugly. I always have. I like them more than I used to. I'll put it that way. So they're growing on me, and I think having them, I think it'll grow on me, and it'll be one of those things where it makes the car. They're a unique aluminum wheel design, that's for sure. I'm pretty sure they're aluminum and not mag wheels. Someone will correct me, but they're the original. See the British Leyland badge there. Now, my 1980 had the hubcaps. It had steel wheels and these kind of bolt-on hubcaps that would bolt on below the lug nuts, and it had a more stainless steel kind of look to it, and it was a somewhat similar design. I'll see if I can find a picture and post it here so you can see, but I kind of like the look of that more, but didn't like that they were hubcaps, and that was actually a critique that some of the early road tests had, like, hey, I'm buying a luxury car, why do I have hubcaps? Of course, Cadillac did that, so, you know. Take a look at this side. This one's missing the center cap, but I do have it. It had popped off. Luckily, the owner was able to locate it. I'll have to do a little work on the retainer to make sure it clips in there good. But just look at the original wheel paint is all original. I mean, these don't even have to be restored. I haven't even washed this car, and that's kind of one of the things. Going back on what we talked about, this car's in here as I picked it up. I haven't washed it. I haven't done anything. So we like to do these kind of raw and, you know, explore the vehicle exactly as it was purchased. Tiny little bit of rust there, not too bad, and definitely something we can fix before it becomes a problem. Rockers, all the original badging is there, all the original trim. Let's go back here. I wanted to show the back valance. All right, so the back valance does have some rust and a little bit of damage. As you can see here, it's been pushed in a little bit. I do believe this back valance may be reproduced, but even if it isn't, it's a pretty easy bend, and with a lot of the work we do with sheet metal here, we could probably chop this out at one point and weld it in. We'll obviously have to remove the fuel tanks if we do that. We don't want to be welding right next to them, but that's an option we can do. At the same time, it's not terrible. We could probably just clean these up, paint it, stop the rust, put some rust converter on, and just get it stable. and then leave it for the time being. You don't see it too much, but I think it would really do the car nicely to clean this area up, because it's really, that's it. That's the worst of it. Now here are the S-tips on the dual exhaust. And I made a comment on the earlier video that I had removed these. And let me move the camera so I can tell another story. All right, so story time. So rewind many, many, many years ago when I had my 1980, and it had some problems with the exhaust. It had an old repair that someone had done to it. And I decided, I saved up some money, and I said, I'm going to have new exhaust done. So I bought tubing out of J.C. Whitney, and I bought some mufflers, like Thrush turbo mufflers or something stupid. And there was this place in town, this muffler shop, and I went and talked to him, and I said, hey, if I bring you the original exhaust, can you bend this pipe to match it? And it would be a little bit wider pipe, and it was about as big as you could fit over the independent suspension. I had done my research. And the guy was like, yeah, I can totally do that. So I took it to him, paid him a couple $100, calls me up a day later, hey, it's all ready for you to pick up. And I go, and the stuff's sitting next to each other. So you got the old exhaust and the new exhaust, and they're completely different. They're not even close. And the guy's like, here you go. And I go, well, that doesn't look like that. And he goes, yeah, I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it right. And I go, well, what are you talking about? You couldn't get it right. He was like, well, you know, I tried and it just didn't work. I couldn't match it. That'll be $200, sir. He tried to charge me, and I remember I got in an argument with him, and I don't remember if I paid or not, to be honest with you. It's one of those things where I probably went on like early Yelp and left a nasty review too, because the guy, I think I told him, I was like, look, if you can't do it, you can't do it. Don't claim you can do it and then not do it and then go, here you go, buddy. Take these home and put them on the car. And he was like, well, you should try them and see if they fit. And I'm like, dude, they're not going to fit. So anyway, I found another shop in town, went and told them the story, and they were like, yeah, we know that shop. they don't know what they're doing, and they've screwed some people over before. So be it. So they said, bring the car, and we'll take care of you. So, of course, I drove the thing with open headers to the shop, which I probably shouldn't have done, but it was fun. And they put a whole custom exhaust on, did it from scratch. And the guy did it super quick. Everything was spot on. So difference between someone claiming they knew what they were doing versus someone actually knowing what they were doing. That was another eye-opener for me as a young kid. But one of the things that he did, he was kind of an old hot rod guy. He took these tips off and he put the downturns on it. And the reason is I had brought with me, one of my dreams was to put the pace setter exhaust on it. I don't know if you remember those. It's probably something you'd see more on a Lamborghini. But it was the dual tipped, so it would be a quad tip exhaust. It had the yellow resonators inside. It was like black pipe with stainless tips. They look great on like Italian exotics, and they would always be in all the J.C. Whitney and the old British car newspaper. Everyone want pace setters tips on their car, maybe even on their Spitfire. And I wanted them so bad. And I had them. I think I sold them on a forum somewhere because I never got them installed. Basically, the guy told me, he's like, look, the tank's right here. You got this Valance. You've got the trunk here. There's no room for them without doing a lot of modifications. So I went ahead and for free slapped on some turndowns for you, which is very nice of him to have done that. Well, the problem that we had is that, as I mentioned before, with those turndowns, there must have been a reason that they put these S-tips on, and it was probably to bring the exhaust gases a little further out from the car. Having it come straight out here seemed to put it into some sort of a vortex that would just suck the exhaust back into the car. At least that's what we concluded at the time with a CO2 meter. I was fortunate enough to know someone who had some CO2 monitoring equipment, and we went for a drive in it, and the faster we went, the more that meter spiked. And somewhere I have the graph. I'll have to take an image of it. And I remember the guy gave me the graph that he printed out from the machine, and he nicknamed it my Deathmobile. So suffice to say, I never had that problem until I had these tips replaced and they had the turn down. So something about dumping the exhaust straight here caused a problem that didn't exist prior. So again, learn from my Deathmobile. All right, I think that's about it. Let's go ahead and wrap up this video. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll have to end it here. We're gonna have a ton more on this car because we're gonna be doing some work on it. We're gonna maybe do the headlight conversion, and we're gonna do some even more stuff showing you the interior a little closer. We'll take it for a drive, but we'll have to do all that in another video because this is gonna be long enough. But I will tell you, I am absolutely ecstatic to have this here and to have this in the fleet. It brings back so many memories of the old car, yet it's also so much better. And I'm in so much a better spot myself mechanically with knowledge to really be able to take care of this thing and to show you what we find on this car and give you some ownership reports as we own it. Is this thing gonna be reliable? I'm not dropping a Chevy 350 in it. We're gonna drive that original motor. So we'll do a little work on it, we'll drive it, and we'll let you know how it is. I'm excited to share that with you. Now don't worry about our other projects, we're still working on those. In fact, I'm making a lot of headway on the Spitfire. We're very close to having the body tub finished up. I'm actually working on it, it's right behind that camera now. Maybe I'll do a separate video and catch you up to speed. Where we're gonna be working on the rolling chassis soon because we're at the point where we're gonna be marrying the body to the chassis to do some panel fitment. So we're very close to having that thing ready to go off for final paint. Well, it doesn't look like it when you see it, but trust me, we're a lot closer than we were 6 months ago. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to see more of this car, you want to see more of our other projects, do us a favor. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, leave us a comment and let us know what you think. All that stuff helps us out and we certainly enjoy making the content. So until then, we'll see you here for more on Vortex Garage.